This is Rustin with Metalholic Magazine and Mojo Radio, and with me, rock icon, legend, Andy Parker of UFO. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Russ. Thank you.
So, 40-plus years, man, you guys have been bringing some of the best music in rock to the masses. How do you guys get up every day and say, hey, we've still got it in us to keep going out there?
Well, fortunately, it isn't every day. We might run out of energy. That's a good question, isn't it? I think it's just, it's so enjoyable. I mean, what's not to like? It has been for. I mean, I have to admit, I haven't done all the 40-odd years. I've been in and out a couple of times. I think Phil's the only current member that's actually been in the band continuously that time. But it's just something about getting up and playing rock music. It energizes you. It really does. I mean, look at Mick Jagger, for heaven's sake. That's living proof right there.
Some of the rock's most noted songs came from you guys, and you're still putting out material that is excellent. And you guys are in the studio, I believe, recording another album now?
Should be any time now. It kind of got a little delayed. And we're actually due to go out on the road in a couple of weeks. We start on the East Coast, the first leg of this year's tour. But yeah, I mean, the material's all been thrown into the hat. We're sorting through it, working on arrangements. A lot of that'll get done on the bus, I think, in the next few weeks when we're out on the road. So I'm hoping to go and cut drum tracks sometime let's look at my schedule, hopefully in June, sort of like mid-June, because we're in Europe then, and then hopefully we're going to lay down some drum tracks then. So I guess look for it around the end of the year, perhaps.
Well, and some of the newer records have been a bit more blues influenced, less of the hard rock sound of the earlier years.
Very much so.
And I love the way UFO can still make every record sound different, fresh, musically relevant. What can we expect on the new CD?
Well, I think that blues trend is probably going to continue. It's interesting for me, prior to Monkey Puzzle, which we did 2006, I believe, that's right after I rejoined the band in 2005, I was quite surprised because, I'd heard some of Vinnie Moore's solo stuff and, kind of was just amazed, how different he kind of approached the UFO project to his own stuff, and then when I heard the material from Monkey Puzzle, there was such a huge blues influence. I mean, not that Vinnie doesn't have blues in his background, it's just that, if you listen to him as a solo artist, he's, has far more of a shredhead kind of on top of things. But that was fine by me because that's kind of the birth of UFO came from the late 60s blues boom, so that was kind of like for me going back to our roots, and then of course that continued with the Visitor, and I just think it's kind of where the band's at now, and I've said this before, this band's never been one to kind of sit down and plan an album, what's hot today, what's commercially viable. Who are we going to target with this album? Basically, this band just sits down and goes, well, here's what I've got, here's where my head's at right now. And I've always loved that about the band. You kind of make it work wherever you're at. And I think just, maybe to do with, the fact that we've been there, done that with the rock thing. It's just, we're older or whatever. But, I really like what's happening with the band. I like that kind of bluesy feel, and Vinny's just so good at it as well, so, and I think Phil's voice, has changed over the years, and it really suits that he's getting that kind of howling wolf thing going now, so it's, for me, I'm well happy, and I think he is too, Phil looks real comfortable on stage these days, he seems to really enjoy himself, which I think is, the major thing with UFO, that's what it's always been about, you've got to enjoy what you're doing, there's no point, and if you come to see us, come to have a good time, don't take things too seriously.
Absolutely, and it was funny, I was just talking with my co-owner in the station, Wes Derby, the other day, and we were talking about how to us, Phil doesn't sound like he's lost or changed anything. He sounds as good today as he did on the very first album.
I think he sounds better, personally, I think his voice has matured over the years, and I just love the stuff he's coming up with. There was a couple of tracks from the last album that just blew me away. That particularly one of my favourite was Living Proof, which I just love the way he treated that song. You know, it just has such a nice groove to it. But yeah, I mean, he's pretty remarkable.
Have you guys settled on a name for the new album yet?
Well, he did chat one at me the other day, but I think I might be jumping the gun a bit to mention it, so I had to take the fifth on that one. Sorry. I mean, he did come up with a title, and but the one thing I know about him is it ain't over till it's over. So that could change 4 or 5 times between now and when the thing gets released. But
one of these days, I'm actually going to get the scoop and beat the other magazines, you know.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll make you a promise. If when I shall see him in about 2 weeks. If he's absolutely certain that's the title he's using, then I'll call you and tell you.
There you go.
But short of checking with him now, I can't really, because this was about the middle of last week. He called up, which he does from time to time, and just shooting the breeze and stuff. He said, "I've got this title I've been thinking about using," and then there's frantic emails flying about. What the hell is he talking about? But it's just something he's got in his head. So I would have to definitely make sure. But if he says it's what we're going with, then I'll let you know. You can be the first to know.
Now, you guys are in different places. Bands spread between the UK and the US now.
Right.
How does the recording process work for a UFO CD?
Well, the last couple of albums, the last 2 that I've done, well, we go back 94. I did Walk on Water. The whole band went to the same place. We're in California, rehearsed, and went in the studio. So it's kind of very much like it used to be. But the last 2 that I've done, I've ended up doing the drums in Germany, and I think the vocals have ended up being done in Germany. But pretty much everything else has been. Vinny works out of his own studio in Delaware, where he lives, and Paul worked out of a studio in Croydon, where he lives, and it's kind of like you phone it in. It's quite wild. Obviously, we start off with kind of just what do you call them? Just kind of scratch tracks, basically.
Right.
So and that's where I'll go down and put the drums. And I worked on the last album because we didn't have Pete Way on the last album. The bass player Peter Pichel, he actually was in the studio with me when we laid down the drums and bass together. So, but it wasn't always. I mean, the bass track that he'd laid down, it wasn't always the finished one. To my drum tracks. So there was a lot of fixing guys, but it's so much easier. I mean, with this digital recording now for the engineer, it's not chopping bits of tape together, sticky stuff. I mean, it's a lot easier. So it kind of lends itself to you being spread out, really. And Vinny loves to work in his own place. He's just used to what he's doing there. So, I mean, in fact, when we were cutting the drum tracks for The Visitor, he actually emailed a whole other song that he'd written, which turned out to be, oh God, I'll think about it in a minute. But anyway, but it was an extra track. He went, "Hey, I just came up with this last night. What do you think?" And we just actually took it and cut drums to it right there and then. It was an extra track. So, Hell Driver, it was. It's off of The Visitor. And so, you couldn't have done that back in the day, really. Once he'd gone home, he would have gone home. He would have to come back to do it. So it's kind of cool that we can do that. And, I mean, it seems to work. So, as long as we spend some time together, sorting through arrangements and getting there kind of, singing off the same song sheet, as it were, then it doesn't seem to cause a problem.
Well, that's the intriguing thing. I mean, you spent, 40-some years in the business doing this, and how much technology has changed.
Oh, man. Our first album was on a 4-track machine with the drums and bass on 1 track. That was it, man. Once you laid it down, that was it. You could turn them up and down, but they all came up and down together, so pretty amazing.
Well, and speaking of bass, I have to ask, hopefully it's not a sore subject, Pete was too ill to be involved in the last tour.
It gets progressively more convoluted, Mr. Way, and you know that we love the guy to death. I mean, he's such a huge part of this band. But I mean, when we were getting ready to cut The Visitor, Pete had been diagnosed with a very serious liver condition. Plus, Pete's lifestyle was complicating it even further. So it was decided that he should take some time out, go get some treatment, I mean, that wasn't necessarily to say this would cure him. It's one of those things that is that serious that, not everyone gets fixed of it. But, at least he was going to make the effort to go and, which is why he didn't come to Germany to do his tracks. He wanted to be with his doctor. They were going to start him on this therapy, to get this problem solved. I spoke to him when I was cutting the drum tracks, and he was good. He was real positive. He was, yeah, I'm straightening up. I'm working out, whatever. The doctor's going to start me on this stuff next week. Blah blah blah. Everything seemed good. But it wasn't long before I started getting emails from his wife at that time. Then I think they've since split. But saying that Pete's fallen off the wagon, he's drinking again. He said this. So of course, the doctors aren't going to give you these because I think they're quite expensive. As you were talking in England, where it's social medicine, so they're going to give it to somebody who deserves it, not somebody who can't sort of change their lifestyle. So this has been going on for a while, and we just didn't feel that Pete, with his lifestyle, was in a fit state to perform to the expectations that we had. So he's just kind of been sitting it out, and we haven't actually replaced him. We've used a variety of different bass players. We used the guy on the album. We've used Barry Sparks and Rob DeLuca and Jeff Coleman for live shows over the last few years. Pretty much just kind of waiting for Pete to sort himself out. Well, unfortunately, Pete hasn't sorted himself out, and hasn't really changed his lifestyle. And I think we're at a situation, and a stage in our career with UFO that we want to be put on the best show that we can. And I think, it was a group decision made that, that until Pete really straightened himself out, that, that we couldn't really have him in the band. And, you may have heard, I don't know if you've heard the rumors that he was working with Michael Schenker recently.
Right, the Strangers in the Night. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I actually saw him in December of last year. We were playing in Brighton, which is, a town in England. It's actually Phil's hometown right now. And Michael and Herman and Pete and, I can't remember the name, another Michael, I think Michael Voss, the singer, we're actually rehearsing there, just very close to where we were playing, and I got to actually see Pete and Michael and Herman, and they all look great except for Pete. These guys, and Michael looks incredible. He's like sober, he's fit, he's and Herman the same, but Pete, as usual, was loaded. And much as we love Pete, you kind of think, well, man, nothing's changed. And I heard just recently, and I don't know, I haven't had this. Actually, from the horse's mouth, but I got it via Vinny that Michael had fired Pete recently because he showed up at rehearsals and he was just, drunk. So, you take it as you will. It's very sad, and we do miss Pete terribly. But like I said, it's one of those situations where people find it hard enough now to come up with the money to come and see a show. You at least got to give them a decent show.
Right.
And unfortunately for Pete, he's kind of got this in his head that he's bulletproof and that he's, he can carry on doing this, and we don't feel the same way. So that's about as kind as I can be. But I do miss him, I really do. He's such an amazing presence, and he's my buddy, and I spent so many years working with him. It is a shame that he can't be there right now, but we, whoever you see us with, and it does change from time to time. All these guys are great bass players, and the band is just smoking right now. So we're pretty happy.
Oh, absolutely. The guys that you've had out with you have done an excellent job live. It's just Pete is sort of that trademark.
Oh, he is. You can't fail but miss him. He's just this larger-than-life character. But, we wouldn't be doing anyone any good to put him back in the band right now.
Right.
He just really does need to. And I just don't know if he ever will. Somebody says, you get a wake-up call. I just don't know. Pete's had so many wake-up calls now. He just doesn't say. He just turns the alarm off, goes back to sleep. You know what I mean?
But the door's always open if he does. Right?
Oh, absolutely. How could you close it on the guy? It's just, and we just keep praying that that he will turn things around. But so far, nothing. So.
Well, see, and it's good to hear it from you what's going on, because a lot of people, myself included, when I saw him working on that Strangers in the Night project, I'm like, wait a minute, you weren't healthy enough to do the Visitor and the tour.
I know, it's been very difficult, Russ, because we've tried to protect him, all along. But the fans are pretty smart, and with the internet and everything, you can't keep. So all along we've just kind of like, Pete's getting, he's working. But there comes a time when you got to go, hey, we've done what we can, dude. It's out. So that's what's going on. He's still alive, but I don't know what he's going to do now.